I'm Jono. Inkscape versus Penpot. Let's see where the vector snaps.
The vector editor and the interface design tool. One works natively in the format the web renders. The other works natively in the style sheet language the web is built with. Both are open source. Both are free. Both serve designers. They are not the same tool, and they do not answer the same question. One was forked in 2003 because contributors wanted better standards compliance. Volunteer-driven. No venture funding. The learning curve requires a week, a tutorial, and what the community describes as a mental breakdown. The other was built by a Spanish consultancy that experienced friction between designers and developers and raised $20 million to solve it. Self-hostable, 400,000 users, almost there, not quite yet. Inkscape and Penpot. The format the web renders and the language the web is built with. Understanding why both claim the web but serve different workflows reveals the distinction the comparison depends on. Inkscape was forked from an earlier project in 2003 by contributors who wanted better compliance with the vector graphics standard. The native format is the standard the web uses to render scalable graphics. The file saved is valid markup that any browser displays without conversion. Volunteer contributors maintain it under a software freedom organization. The release cadence of approximately one major version per year reflects what volunteer availability produces. Version 1.3 in July 2023 brought a shape construction tool and multi-threaded rendering. Version 1.4 in October 2024 brought a filter gallery, import for a discontinued competitor's format, and a font browser. The non-destructive path effects provide on-canvas manipulation that simpler tools lack. The node editor is considered the strongest in the open source category. The performance ceiling comes from a processor-based rendering backend without graphics hardware acceleration. Complex files slow down. Text handling requires learning the tool's conventions. The community describes the experience as taking patience and rewarding it. Penpot was built by a Spanish consultancy founded in 2011 that experienced friction between designers and developers using proprietary tools. Internal experiments produced the prototype. Dedicated development began in 2019. The public alpha arrived in February 2021, $8 million in funding in September 2022, $12 million more 5 months later. Version 2 in April 2024 brought the style sheet grid system as a layout primitive, a redesigned component architecture, and design tokens in the open industry standard. The tool is self-hostable. Container orchestration, database, reverse proxy, and version management are the operational requirements. Self-hosting is the most compelling differentiator and the most consistent source of friction. Port confusion, plugin installation not exposed on hosted instances, and an export breaking after a minor update are documented. The version 1 to 2 migration broke component compatibility for teams with complex design systems. Performance on large files hits a ceiling from the browser rendering model. The community assessment is consistent. Almost there for specific teams, not yet a universal replacement for the dominant collaborative tool. The two tools serve different design workflows. Inkscape produces vector graphics, logos, icons, scalable diagrams, technical illustrations, and assets for the web. The output is a file. The workflow is individual or small team, producing static deliverables. Penpot produces interface designs and prototypes, screens, components, design systems, and interactive flows. The output is a collaborative workspace. The workflow is team-based, producing specifications that developers implement. A designer creating a logo uses Inkscape. A product design team creating the interface for a web application uses Penpot. A designer who needs both creates the logo in Inkscape and designs the interface in Penpot. The tools do not compete for the same task. They sit at different points in the design process. The web alignment is real for both but means different things. Inkscape's alignment is format level. The file it produces is the standard the web renders natively. Penpot's alignment is implementation level. The layouts it produces use the constructs developers write in style sheets. Both serve the web. Inkscape serves what the browser displays. Penpot serves what the developer builds. The distinction matters because a team evaluating open source design tools for web work needs both capabilities, and neither tool replaces the other. The funding models create different trajectories. Inkscape depends on volunteer time. The development pace is steady and constrained. Penpot has venture capital. The development pace is faster and carries the structural risk that investor priorities may diverge from community priorities. The open source license protects the code in both cases. What it does not protect is the development momentum, which depends on the contributors for Inkscape and the company for Penpot. Someone whose primary output is vector graphics, logos, icons, scalable diagrams, or technical illustration should use Inkscape. The format purity means the working file is the delivery file for web use. The non-destructive path effects and the node editor provide capabilities that distinguish the tool from simpler alternatives. The learning curve is the entry cost. What the tool produces after the investment is professional vector work in the format the web already uses. The performance ceiling on complex files and the text handling conventions are limitations the user accepts in exchange for a tool that costs nothing and produces standards-compliant output. Someone whose primary need is collaborative interface design, component systems, design tokens, and developer handoff should use Penpot. The style sheet native layout means design measurements translate directly to the code developers write. The design tokens in the open standard format are portable across tools and storable in version control. Self-hosting eliminates the dependency on a third-party service. The feature gap with the dominant collaborative tool, the performance ceiling on large files, and the self-hosting operational overhead are limitations the team accepts in exchange for open standards, data ownership, and design code alignment. Someone evaluating both tools for a web design team should understand that they complement each other rather than compete. The vector editor produces the assets. The interface design tool produces the screens and specifications. A team that uses both covers vector graphics and interface design with open source tools that produce web-native output. The gap in each tool is in different capabilities. Inkscape's gap is in collaborative design and prototyping. Penpot's gap is in precise vector illustration and path manipulation. Neither tool's gap overlaps with the other's strength. The performance limitations are different in cause and character. Inkscape's ceiling comes from a processor-based rendering backend that cannot leverage graphics hardware. The mitigation is to keep documents at moderate complexity or accept slower canvas interaction on heavy files. Penpot's ceiling comes from browser rendering model Bloat on large projects with many components. The mitigation is to structure projects to avoid excessive frame counts or accept slower interaction on complex workspaces. Both ceilings are architectural. Both constrain what the tool handles smoothly. Neither is likely to be resolved without significant architectural work that volunteer or small team development produces slowly. The horror stories are proportionate to the tool's maturity. Inkscape's complaints center on platform stability in a specific version era and a learning curve that the community describes without apology. Penpot's complaints center on self-hosting friction, migration pain between major versions, and the feature gap with the dominant competitor. Both tools' problems are the growing pains of active projects rather than signs of decline. Inkscape has been developing for over 20 years, and the recent releases represent genuine momentum. Penpot has been publicly available for 5 years, and the funding, user growth, and feature additions represent a tool that is closing the gap with its commercial target. The web is served by both tools in ways that proprietary alternatives do not match. A vector file that any browser renders without conversion. An interface design whose layout measurements map to the style sheet properties developers write. Both are open source, both are free, both produce output in formats the web uses natively. The proprietary alternatives in both lanes produce output that requires conversion, export, or proprietary tooling to move into the web workflow. For teams whose values include open standards, format portability, and freedom from vendor lock-in, the combination of Inkscape and Penpot covers vector graphics and interface design with tools that align with those values. The learning curve for one and the operational overhead for the other are the costs. What the tools produce when the investment is made is web-native design work that no proprietary tool matches on openness.